Good friend of mine, Dan Vandewarker. Dan worked for a couple years at Grace Vista Presbyterian Church, 2 years, and now he's the high school pastor at the church at Rancho Bernardo. It's a non-denom church there, and his wife actually preached last week. He asked me not to share that, but let us welcome Dan.
Good morning. Shannon and I debated who was going to go first, and I think it was probably a little silly for me to let her go first, but nonetheless, here we are. Let me tell you a little bit. I was thinking about you all coming into church this morning because when I was in high school, our church was going through the process of finding a new pastor, and I remember waking up in the morning wondering who's going to be preaching this morning. If you're laughing, you know what I'm talking about. So, and I just remember the bet was on, and then it was either the sign of relief or the sign of uh-oh when they walked up on the stage, right? No one look at Jeremiah. So, my first time in a Presbyterian church was when I was interviewing for a position there. Shannon and we wanted to go and kind of get a feel for the church as to what it was like before we went and started talking with them. And as we got there, I quickly realized that something was off. As I looked around, I realized that I was the only person not wearing red. And if you've grown up in the Presbyterian church, then you know that on the day of Pentecost, you come wearing red. And so here I am trying to go under the radar, and yet there's this literal glaring red flag that I do not belong. So that was my first experience at the Presbyterian church. So I'm glad to be here for another one. And just so you know, Pentecost is May 19th. So as Shannon shared last week, we have a beautiful little boy, or handsome little boy named Declan. We just recently celebrated his 1-year birthday, and you know that he knows how to make a good cup of coffee from our Keurig. There are many things that I look forward to and love teaching my son. This week I took him disc golfing, and he's in line to beat me already. We've taken him to the zoo and tried to get him to look at the animals. He's learned how to turn on the TV. He's learned how to swap the pictures on my phone. Just the other day, I saw him playing with the electric outlet while I was getting ready. And I think that his mom taught him that one. I don't want to take credit for that. But there are also a lot of things that I'm not looking forward to having to teach my son about. And one of those is this whole idea of winning and losing. You know that there is nothing like training and disciplining yourself for competition only to come up short of the win. I can remember playing a game of, it was Knockout, which is somewhat, it's like a more violent game of horse for basketball, and it's not violent, but aggressive, that's a better word, aggressive. And I remember playing with some young kids, and the winner was clear because he was running around chanting, and he won and won. And then another little boy came up to me and he said, "Well, what about me? What about me? He won, so what about me?" And I can remember not knowing how to explain this concept of winning and losing. I'm not looking forward to that experience as a father, having to teach a son about winning and losing. But I'm learning that little leagues and sports, and they've addressed this problem by just giving trophies to everyone. So while I don't know if that's the answer, at least it's a short-term fix. But there are other areas of our life as we get older, as life brings us through more experiences, where this idea of winning and losing comes into play. I'd like to share with you just a few of where I felt kind of in last place, if you will. recently, well, within the last 4 months, Shannon had to have her appendix out. It was the one, or not the one time, the first time in our marriage. Typically, I'm the one that's like, oh, you're sick, go to the doctor. And it was the one time where Shannon was saying, my stomach really hurts, and I'm like, it's okay, just go to sleep. My stomach really hurts. Let's see how you feel in the morning. And then lo and behold, at 3 in the morning, she goes in the hospital, and it's her appendix. And so I felt like a total and complete jerk of a husband. And never again do I say, just tough it out. But I can, the last place feeling came when we were checking into the hospital, because Shannon and I were part of this kind of a different health insurance where it's this bill share. It's totally legit. It sounds sketchy. Whatever. Take your own take on it. But basically, it negotiates our bills down, and then the organization helps us pay them with a cash payment. And so, but when you check into the hospital, you check in as having no insurance. And there was probably four different times where people came from the hospital staff to ask us for insurance information. And I will never forget the look in their eyes and the look in the eyes of the people standing behind me as someone who didn't have medical insurance. It was a last place feeling in life. And I'd like to share another one. It came with the birth of our son. There was the decision as to whether or not Shannon would go back to work. No doubt some of you in here have had to decide whether or not you'd be a single income family or a dual income family. And so we committed that Shannon would be able to stay home with our son Declan. And I'm overjoyed that we're able to do that. I would work as many jobs as needed to be able to support this decision. But it came time that we needed to be aggressive in how we were going to make this a reality. And we have a home that we love. It is 3 miles away from the Oceanside Pier. It's actually 2.56 miles away from the Oceanside Pier. It's a short bike ride from having sand in our toes. We would frequently just pop down to the beach and walk the pier and then come home. And it was something that we always wanted. We had great neighbors in the Kanabis. We convinced them to be our neighbors, and then we moved. So hopefully your interim pastor has a different fate. So, but it came time for us to make a decision. Do we keep the house, or does Shannon go back to work? And so we decided to put it up for rent. And I still, to this day, as we talk to people, that I picture that rent sign going in our front yard as this proclamation for not being able to afford our mortgage, for standing up to have our family values at the cost of our financial success taking a hit, or at least the appearance of it. And now we are blessed beyond words to have a family to support us in this, to live with our parents as we establish a savings and good renters and find a different place to live. But that in itself brings another last place scenario, this feeling of not being able to support your own family. Last place. Shannon and I, as you can hear, are in the season of transition in our life. And there is more, but I will spare you of it. But this whole concept of winning and losing, it stretches beyond the games that we used to play as kids. As I'm about to turn 30, which I don't even like saying, and I know some of you are surprised that I can drive, but I'm sure that there will be many more wins and losses that come with life. And I'd like to just share with you a few things about what I'm learning about winning and losing as a part of the journey of the Christian faith. And the first is this. The first is that wins are not guaranteed. That as Christians, wins are not guaranteed. That our Christian faith requires us to make sacrifices and requires us to be obedient. Sacrifices like the one that Christ made on the cross, and obedience like the one that Christ lived out in his life here. Wins are not guaranteed. Mark 10, 29 through 31. I'm going to read it again if you don't mind. Truly, I tell you, Jesus replied, that no one has left home, home being your possessions, home being the roof over your head, the car in your garage. No one has left home, or brothers, or sisters, or mother, or father, or children, or fields. Fields would be what? Fields would have been their income, their occupation. No one has left those things for me in the gospel will fail to receive 100 times more than in this present age. Homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and fields, along with the persecution and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who will be first will be last, and the last will be first. The first will be last, and the last will be first. You see, it's during challenging times where I don't believe that Jesus is so concerned with the final outcome as he is the process that we go through to get there. You see, we have to remember that our faith is not evaluated by our home or our brothers or sisters or mothers or our fields, but that our faith is evaluated by who we share it with. Our faith is evaluated by what is eternal. It is evaluated as we are mindful of the brokenhearted, as we prepare to go on mission trips to Mexico. Our faith is evaluated by how we live with the mindset of what is eternal. There's a ministry downtown called New Vision Urban Outreach, and it's an incredible ministry. It serves the homeless population in downtown. And I don't know if you're aware of this, I wasn't, that San Diego has the third largest homeless population in the whole country. The third largest homeless population is a 20-minute drive away from where you live. And this ministry that we partnered with is incredible. It's a very impoverished church. I'm surprised when I go in there. I'm a little concerned. I feel like I need to wear a hard hat because I think the ceiling might fall down on me. It's a very poor church. But yet, this little church of 300 in this last month provided over 15,000 meals for the local community. 15,000 meals. 2,000 of those were hot meals, and the rest were groceries delivered to low-income homes. Good food, fresh fruit that we would go and pay top dollar for. 15,000 meals. To give you some perspective of what that is 20 tons of food. That's 14 Toyota Priuses of food. I'm still processing that I had to give up my truck for a Toyota Prius. So, but this last month, I was talking with Pastor Mike, and if you can write down Pastor Mike's name and be praying for him, I know he would be grateful. I was texting him last night at 10, making sure that I could tell him the story, and he gave me the approval. So. I will never forget this time of sitting down for a meal with Pastor Mike at the end of our trip, at the end of our day trip serving the San Diego homeless. We were there, and Pastor Mike, his salary makes the poverty line look good. If I told you how little he made, you probably wouldn't believe it. You'd think I would be exaggerating. And in the midst of things that I've already shared with you about myself, I remember sitting down with Mike, and in comes the door opens, and his son just comes running up and jumps into his arms and just holds him and starts talking about how he spent the day riding his bike and just so joyful and happy to be sitting on his dad's lap. And I remember in that moment, that scene plays over and over in my head, almost on a daily basis. When I leave for work and my son is asleep and I come home and he's asleep, when I miss out a day of my life, or a day of my son's life, I picture this scene with Pastor Mike and his son. And I ask myself, is it worth it? Is it worth it to see my son stand up for the first time, or to do silly things like learn how to flush the toilet, or whatever it is that he does, all for the sake of being seen successful? I ask myself, is it worth it? Because I see Pastor Mike, and I know the things that his challenges are, and at the end of the day, I don't believe that he would trade anything for having his son run in and jump on his lap. I wonder what we have missed out on for the sake of being seen as in first place. I wonder what more we could experience if we were willing to be seen in last place. See, wins are not guaranteed, but even more than that, as Christians, we are supposed to let other people win. It says, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. In Mark 10:43 through 45, Jesus says, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus came to serve, not to be served. He washed his disciples' feet. You know how gross their feet would have been? Like, gross feet. And I don't even want to wash my wife's feet. I don't know those other guys with tunics. That sounds precarious to me. So he washed the feet of his disciples. He ministered to the women at the well. He cared for the people that no one wanted anything to do with. He was a servant to all. He was a God child who could have had everything. He could have had extra cushioned sandals. He could have had a camel with mint fresh breath. He could have had the gold trimmed tunic, but yet he gave it all up. And he said, I want to be a servant to the lowest of the low. That was the status that he set up for us. That was the measure of greatness. That was the last becoming first. See, Jesus, he stepped away from everything that he deserved, everything that he was entitled to. He never once laid claim, when he was being treated poor, that he should be treated better. He simply stepped out and he served. He became last. You see, Jesus isn't distracted as to my income. He isn't distracted as to whether I am sick or healthy. He isn't distracted as to the car that I drive. But what he is doing is he's watching to see how I will serve others. He's watching to see how I will show him to others. You see, Jesus, who gave up everything, is at the right hand of God, with the measure of greatness being you letting other people win. And so I want to leave a little bit of an open-ended challenge to you of how are you going to do that? How are you going to sacrifice yourself to serve others? What are the opportunities that you need to be saying yes to more often, and what are the opportunities that you need to be saying no to more often? And this pursuit of greatness, and this pursuit of success, and this pursuit of wealth, how are you going to show your neighbors the love of Christ? Because that is the standard of greatness. Let me pray for us. God, as I prepared for this morning, I just had the impression that we tend to overcomplicate things. That that you look at us and you just say, give that person a granola bar. Stop overthinking it. That you look at us and say, How is it that you live here and yet you don't know your neighbor's name? That you look at us and you say, be great by loving others, by serving others. I thank you that you have shown us by example what it means to be great. And so I pray that you would teach us to be okay with coming in last place, Lord. And I pray this in your Son's name.